How do you escape the rat race? You change your priorities. You let go of concepts, the momentum of concepts, and the environment which is conditioning and locking you in. We could live a life where all the interactions with other people that we meet in our day-to-day life are really meaningful and really profound. And that seems to be the opportunity that we have in our existence. How do we want our life to be? Do we want it to be wonderful? And then what are the conditions or defaults of what it becomes like to be us? What does the rat race look like? It looks like someone waking up, going to do a job they don't really like, to earn money, to try and change circumstances of their life, but they never really get far, whether it's the relationships or the family, or it's how they spend their time, or being lost on social media. The ways this person who's lost in the rat race or is going for it, they're really trying to get somewhere, but they're not getting anywhere. And for me, this was a view of life I naturally inherited. It seemed to be what everyone else around me was doing, and I certainly it was never pressed upon me that there was anything more worthwhile for me to do. I no longer feel like I'm stuck in those patterns of behavior. I feel very free from it, but my life looks very different now. And I want to share with you how I've attained the freedom that I do feel. So I grew up, I guess, thinking that a job would fulfill me. So I was very much chasing this notion of success. And that's all there was, this thing I was trying to attain. So I tried to pursue that. And with my vision very tunneled towards that goal, the basis of my life, the quality of what I was experiencing, I just wasn't looking after myself. It was very destructive. And I had so much of my self-worth tied up in this goal that I started to hate myself. And that looked like me not, being unhealthy, becoming depressed, essentially not, feeding myself properly, not exercising, probably being antisocial, very anxious around other people, eventually not getting out of bed. And I became very depressed, and I ended up having, some sort of psychotic breakdowns effectively because of this boiler pot of tension, trying to get somewhere, and then, living the meaninglessness of life and the meaninglessness of a suffering life where there were no longer really peaks of good moments. It was just all a swath of not funness or unenjoyment. I did had some psychological breakdowns, and then I needed to just get some space. So I ended up leaving behind a lot of the conditions of my life, or I literally moved country, got and moved away from all the people I was around with. I stopped pursuing the career I was pursuing. I continued working a job because I needed to, but just some job which was in a field I'd never considered before, just to give me some space. Upon ditching all these ideas, I did immediately feel freer. And it wasn't so simple. When it was tumultuous, it was very tumultuous. But when I got some space, I did, I felt, at least it felt quieter, I felt freer, I felt happier, more peaceful. And it was during this time that I had my first meditative insights, just randomly walking down a road one day. I had this experience of non-duality or self-transcendence that meditation traditions will talk about. A bunch of religions are based off them. Awakening. I had a spiritual awakening where suddenly I realized there was this other dimension or way of being me in the world. And it felt wonderful. I felt truly content for the first time in my life, where I knew things weren't a matter of judgment. A while after that time, it became clear to me that there was something that one could discover about the nature of their consciousness, which had very important implications for them and not having to suffer again. But I also was aware that I wasn't always sustaining that way of being, so I had to learn more. And so I did start studying and learning all the different meditation books. When I had that experience, there was no context, so I had to figure out, okay, wait, how do I access this very peaceful way of being? And I've spent a lot of my time trying to understand how to practice this insight. And then, currently today I still practice trying to sustain it It's possible to shift your experience of life in which that concept, you see through it completely and you realize that someone trying to get somewhere is entirely false. It's a false premise. And that's what the meditative insight into selflessness or awakening is. You embody a reality in which there is nowhere to get to. Everything is peaceful. So that's something that is that I want to share, and that's what we talk about on this channel. If you'd like to subscribe, that's something that we talk about here and share. I think that's an essential part of how one can escape the hamster cycle, and that's got very much its own approach. Heaps of traditions talk about it. We're trying to make it accessible here. I don't think it's a huge deal, or I like to try to minimize it, because I think it's a radical claim to say that you can be completely peaceful and content, and it's this very specific insight. That sounds radical, but I think as more time passes, this will just be an accepted conversation. Take some time, but it's essential that we know that it's possible. And so that's something I pursue, but it's not the only thing which has helped me get out of the pinball or the hamster wheel. The other thing which has helped me, change the patterns of my life the most was when I met my partner overseas. I was working over there for a while in China, and I met the love of my life, and she really held me accountable to the remnants of my ego or self I had left. She would just ask, and I expressed any sort of personal view on something, or anything I had slight problems with, or things I felt challenging, ideas I would have about the world. Oh, here's one. When the idea of money comes up for me, I close down and I can only behave in very certain and tense ways around the topic, as opposed to just the default of being open about it, being free to engage with it in any way, just as an idea. Just as an idea, it makes me tense. And my partner just has always seemed to have this very instinctive relationship to love and compassion. So whenever one of these things would naturally get expressed, as they do when you're next to someone and moving throughout the world, she would just always ask me why, and not give me any answers, but ask me why I feel that way, and then I would have to explain it, and then she'd continue asking me why, very lovingly though, and it wasn't ever confrontational, always open and loving, until I could see that these ways I was expressing myself were just patterns of behavior which I didn't need to express. It was actually safe to let go of those ideas, these conditioned ideas I had, because, little do you know, my parents were very strict about money, and I could just ask my questions about why I was still behaving that way, and then let go of the idea, and I'd find a bit of freedom there. In Buddhism, the path you're practicing isn't just about meditation. It's as essentially about love and compassion. I didn't get it from the Buddha, I got it from my partner. But there's this instinctive, if we're opening up to love and compassion in every moment, when we're examining our lives, what does love and compassion mean? It just means opening up to those wonderful ways that it can be. And so adopting a life where I do actively examine every component of my life with love and compassion, and where love is always the answer, it's always the answer, that has really stopped this pinball machine and wheel. Because now I don't do things for my ego, for myself. Well, I do things as love or out of love. And when one really makes that the anchor of being in the world, one naturally starts to move, to step off the hamster wheel that they're running on, and to, they leave the pinball machine of bouncing back between these emotions and feelings, because those things are all predicated on conditions which aren't loving. And if we examine all those conditions, move towards love, what is more loving? If I have insight and freedom and experience a loving life, what's the next loving thing that comes to mind for me? It's helping other people. we can very, and this is my own dharma now, right? But we can very practically examine our lives. And that's all the question ever is how do we move towards more love? You place love as the highest value in your life, not arbitrary goals of trying to get someone doesn't matter, somewhere doesn't matter. Freedom matters. Place freedom as the highest value of that someone. So that someone is just freedom, and somewhere is just the story or journey or exploration of freedom spreading. There has been a lot. I can't underestimate how much examining of the way things are and who I take myself to be has happened, because I don't really experience samsara anymore. I experience quite meaningful moments of my life, which are a bit of distraction. Like, I'm not necessarily in that awakened mind all the time, but at least the moments where I'm not there, it feels great, it feels celebrative, enjoyment. But what I'm really saying there is I think the model is quite clear. Why be someone trying to get somewhere if it's just a pattern of negative emotions with some little highlights? I think I want to leave, just to make improving your life more practical, I want to leave you with one final idea, which would be, today, as you go about your day, what's one thing you could just not do and that would make your life better? Is there one thing that you could refrain from doing today? It might actually just give you more space. That can be an easy way to get a little bit more, to change your conditions for the better. I'm going to leave you with that thought. Thanks, guys.